Stellar Blade on Steam Deck, thanks to PlayStation Publishing for providing a code. So this game is verified and it has a Steam Deck preset, so we're going to take a look at the default settings, then the best settings, because I think this game really needs some manual tweaking to look the best. Alright, so by default we're at 800p, target frame rate of 60, the rest, well, this is optional. Motion blur is at 10, I think, camera shake as well. This is honestly personal preference, so camera shake I like to keep it at 0, same with motion blur. And chromatic aberration, these are post-process effects, personally don't enjoy them. Graphics preset, Steam Deck, so there's a Steam Deck preset, which is awesome to see, but it's not always the best when it comes to games, who knows, sometimes it's good. Performance upscaling, that means that we're technically at 400p, so 800p, but we're upscaled from 400p. Then when it comes to settings, basically the lowest settings with character object detail on medium. Textures, we cannot touch them at all, which is a shame, but hey. Then when it comes to shadows, very low, which is the lowest setting. Ambient occlusion on low, and no screen space reflections. So let's get into the game, see what performance we get, and then do a comparison. And I want to thank the sponsor Instant Gaming. Instant Gaming is a website where you can buy games for PC, PlayStation, Xbox and Nintendo Switch for a discounted price with 24/7 support. You can get the Alters for $26.55, Expedition 33 for $42.61, that's the deluxe edition. And there's also Hogwarts Legacy for 16.16 and Days Gone as well. And due to this partnership, we're doing a giveaway, one each month, so the one that wins is going to win a game of their choice from Instant Gaming. 16 days ago, Diemza won this giveaway and he chose, so that's a lot of titles, but he chose whichever game that he wanted. So hit participate, follow myself and Instant Gaming in social media, and thanks again to Instant Gaming for sponsoring this video. Let's continue. Alright, so welcome to Stellar Blade. This is the default settings. In my opinion, they're not great. 400p is probably targeting 60, I get it. But I think it's still not enough. You'll see why in a moment. But texture quality on low, unfortunately, is insanely low. I'm also going to show you that. For characters, and especially the environments, you're going to notice this, and a lot of shimmering on the hair. Color screen is less noticeable. The FSR3 implementation isn't great. So as you can see, we can be into the 50s, and I'm showing you the beginning of the game because actually this is what drops pretty hard to me, which is interesting to say the least. But again, on Steam Deck, honestly, while the game still looks good enough, in my opinion, it's way too pixelated and the texture quality is insanely low. I mean, look at this. And FSR3 makes everything look smudgy. Especially when you move the camera, the ground is insanely pixelated. I'm going to zoom in super quick so you can see when I'm moving the camera. The ground just becomes insanely pixelated. And again, we're not hitting 60s, which again makes sense, it's a Steam Deck. This game is was only on PS5, never came out on PS4. But it's still Unreal Engine 4 at the end of the day. So again, shadows, they're still fine in my opinion on very low. And there's no screen space reflections, as you can see on the ground. But again, what bothers me the most is the texture quality and the such aggressive upscaling that we're doing here, while the upscaler not being of super high quality.
Watch out.
It's very distracting, especially on the hair. So if you go into the gameplay options, you can make Eve's ponytail shorter, so there is not a ponytail that is like 2 meters long, flying around the screen. It's completely pixelated. So yeah, performance is good, but I think we can get way better resolution and visuals by doing manual adjustments. Then when it comes to the open locations, they're usually pretty demanding on the CPU and VRAM in comparison to the beginning of the game. Bigger maps, more enemies into the distance. So while the Steam Deck settings, in my opinion, run pretty well, I still think that we could do way better than this. So I'm going to show you that in a moment, but I notice it being way too pixelated. What I'm saying is the Steam Deck can do better than this. But I understand the developers being super conservative, so it stays above 40 at all times. Although sometimes we get 45, something like that. So again, not perfect. And the upscaler isn't fantastic. So first of all, what I would do in graphics is crank up that texture quality. Unfortunately, we are locked, so we need to do an adjustment. Just quit out of the game. And going onto the options for the game, into properties, general, and you go all the way down here. Type this exactly as you see it. In this case is Steam Deck equals 0 percentage command percentage. You're basically telling the game, hey, this is not a Steam Deck, unlock all the options. Alright, so now that we told the game that we're not on a Steam Deck, go into the options, windowed mode, apply the changes, choose 1152 by 720. Once you do that, you have full control over the sharpness, so you can use the built-in FSR1 from here. When it comes to graphics, disable FSR3, use the in-game TAA with 80 to 90% resolution. To the rest of the settings, environments can be on medium, character object detail, this can be on medium as well. Textures and character textures on high, this is the main thing in my opinion. Clutter density, low. These can stay the same. Shadows, low. All these on low. Particles on low. Basically everything on low, including screen space reflections. So now we have actual reflections. And on low, actually, the game still looks pretty damn good. It's just that the texture quality on anything below high is pretty muddy. But we're using basically enough virtual memory to be able to hold that up. And now with these settings that I provided, you should have a good amount of headroom to do 40 to 45 FPS. It really depends on what you are aiming for. Personally, I think 40s is ideal to not sacrifice image quality further. And while the in-game TAA is still not perfect, it's not smudgy on the terrain when you're moving the camera. But as you can probably notice, the characters have way better textures, and the environment especially, you'll notice the biggest difference. Now we don't have those muddy textures on here. This used to be like 2 pixels. It's still not the best, but it's significantly better than before. And again, the performance, I think if you looked at the Steam Deck presets, the performance was like 5 frames ahead, but we're still dropping into the 40s there on the Steam Deck preset, so I don't think we should sacrifice that much image quality, considering that we can still stay above 40s. Again, significant improvement of image quality and settings. The hair, again, still not perfect. We're playing at 80 to 90% TAA, but I think it looks way better than FSR3, especially when it comes to clarity. On the smaller screen it's way less noticeable, and there's also some ghosting here and there. So let me show you what it looks like locked to 40 on the smaller screen, because I think that's the best that it can get. So let me pause the game and swap over to handheld mode. And the game looks great. The thing is, again, there's shimmering, but on the smaller screen really, the shimmering, the pixelation on FSR3 is way more noticeable than this. And you can also control the sharpness from the in-game, the Steam Deck, the SteamOS FSR1, from the same menu that you control the FPS cap. And again, you can also lock it to 45, but on 45 it tends to be not stable 45. So yeah, and if you see flicker on the screen, that's my camera. The Steam Deck doesn't flicker like that. It's because it's 40 Hz and my camera doesn't support that shutter speed. So that leads to flickering. So apologies on that. But despite the explosions, it's a pretty smooth frame time in comparison. And it's consistent, which is what matters, at least in my opinion. And now we're back in the open world, which again, the open world usually is less demanding than the first level when it comes to GPU usage. I did notice that when you get to one of the cities, the game really becomes CPU limited if you go anywhere above 45 FPS. So yeah, Anything over 45 I think is too much to ask from the Steam Deck. So keep that in mind. That's the thing, that's the big issue. But when it comes to the tweaks again, texture quality is significantly better. Image quality, in my opinion, is also significantly better. Again, not perfect because, you know, it's low resolution and it's TAA, so you cannot expect much from it. Some ghosting here and there, but again, with the smaller screen, it really doesn't come out, isn't that obvious in comparison. And even I saw people on the internet that with the default settings said, man, this game looks fantastic, and they're using performance upscaling. So if that visual fidelity is acceptable to them, this will be fantastic for most people. So now instead you get consistent 40s instead of a wild locked frame rate to 60 that fluctuates between 40 and 60. Plus you get better battery life. This should be like 2.5 to 3 hours of battery on the OLED. On the LCD, more like 90 to 100 minutes, I'd say. One of the best-selling, well, the best-selling single-player game from Sony. I wonder why. It's probably the gameplay. I mean, look at all that gameplay that I'm doing. But, yeah. I think they did a great job with the port so far. I only wish we had a better way to do anti-aliasing. But again, you can get way better image quality by telling the game that you're not a Steam Deck. I wish they improved the graphical settings of the Steam Deck preset so most people can access this level of performance. And now we get to the city. This is like 2 or 3 hours into the game, depends on how quick you beat the first boss, and I think the second one as well. And here's when I notice CPU limitation. By just walking around, it's not like the city is super duper full of NPCs and stuff like an open world game. But here's when the CPU suffers the most, and you can see spikes in the frame time. Also, something that you'll notice is that the VRAM with these settings is basically maxed out, the system RAM, better said. We're using all the 16 gigs. So if you want to keep that under control, consider the environment textures to be on medium, and you should be good to go with high character textures and medium environment. But overall, performance is completely fine, at least in my opinion. So with the 45 FPS cap that I enabled right now, as you can see, the CPU cannot handle this. It's not using the GPU at its maximum potential. And well, there are some drops here and there. But again, this is just running around town. No big deal. The thing is, when you're outside fighting enemies, it can also drop. So again, to keep the VRAM under control, environment textures on medium, high character textures, and you should be good to go. If this is not enough, lower also environments, and it should be fine. But again, texture quality on low is really way too much of a downgrade, at least in my opinion. And here's a comparison between the default Steam Deck preset and the preset that I showed you myself. That was some manual tweaking with that thing, showing you focus mostly on texture quality, shadow resolution, and the edges of the image to see how much blurry one is versus the other. So those two. Hope you enjoy. Thanks for watching, and I'll see ya next time. Bye guys.
You were right. This place is dangerous. Take my hand. This way to the rendezvous.